So welcome to our fifth episode of Can I Recycle That? So as you can see today, we've got a new format. I am here. So my name's Jess and I'm part of the marketing team at First Mile. And today I'm going to be firing some recycling questions at Bruce. He'll be joining us shortly. So please feel free to send in any, odd recycling question that you've got. Just pop it in the chat here. And if there's ever a topic that you would like us to discuss on, waste, recycling, sustainability, please feel free to DM us because we're always, open for new ideas and topics to talk about. So please, send them through to us, and then we can discuss them next week or in our following episodes. Today we're going to be focusing on what happens to my household waste. So I shall let Bruce, the CEO of First Mile, join the call because he'll be much better at answering the questions than me. Hello.
Hi Jess. Hello. Hi everybody.
I don't know if you've seen, we've got a lot of excited people. We're getting a lot of waves today.
Excellent.
As I was telling our audience today, we're going to focus specifically on what happens to our household waste. So
great.
Send in your questions.
Looking forward to the questions. Looking forward to the new format. So it's very relaxing for me, Jess. I don't need to ask myself the question and chat out the channel. So
more interactive for you.
Yeah, I can't promise the quality of the answers is going to be any better though, but I will.
I'm sure they will. So I think we should get right to it. So our first question, which I know is a material that we really, really love in the recycling industry, is why are cans infinitely recyclable and what happens to them?
Cool. So there's two types of cans, aluminium and steel, but they both have a really cool quality in that they recycle. When you recycle them, they recycle at the molecular level, meaning that they don't lose any of their quality or properties when they're recycled. So they can be recycled over and over and over again forever, and they remain as pure in the same format as they always are. So therefore, it doesn't really matter what can you're recycling. They're super easy to recycle. They're recycled over and over again. So here I've got an aluminium can, and a nice little tip for an aluminium can as well is if you have any aluminium foil, kitchen foil, or this is a sweet wrapper, roll it into a little ball and then pop it in the can, and then it all stays together and goes and gets recycled. So it's a really, really nice way of doing it. And I suppose the way to think about permanent and non-permanent materials is that aluminium and steel cans are permanent, they get recycled at the molecular level. But if you think about something like a cardboard box, every time it's recycled, the fibers that make up the cardboard get shorter and shorter and shorter, and eventually they can't be formed into a sheet of craft paper, which goes to make the cardboard box. But that isn't an issue with cans, so they're super recyclable. Make sure they're always recycled, and the energy that is saved through using a recycled material rather than a virgin material is massive. And in the case of aluminium, it saves 90% of the energy to make this can from recycled aluminium rather than bauxite ore.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. So you've heard it. Please recycle all of your cans. So for our second question is, can paper be turned back into paper, or does it get turned into like lower quality paper or paper towel, those kind of items? And then same question for cardboard as well.
Great. I sort of started talking about that one. So I guess it depends. There's a myriad, there's many different types of paper and cardboard.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of things here. So this is a nice piece of white office paper from a printer. And this is a prop from a few weeks ago I had, which is a highly printed craft cardboard egg, a bit like cereal boxes as well. they can both be recycled absolutely and put them into a recycling system. White office paper can be recycled back into paper if it's de-inked and pulped in a specific way carefully and then made back into copy paper. And you'll quite often see, and hopefully you're buying, either recycled notepads or recycled copier paper, and it doesn't look anything different to if it's made out of virgin material. So absolutely paper can be recycled back into paper. However, there's different types and different qualities. With this cardboard box here, it probably contains some recycled content anyway, and it can definitely be recycled, but there's a lot of ink on it, and it needs to go through a more intensive de-inking and pulping mechanism than a nice piece of white paper that's only lightly inked. There's a bit of ink on there. And so as part of that more intensive process, the fibers will be shorter, and therefore it might only be suitable to go into a tissue product, or quite often it will go into a brown cardboard box. So it largely depends on what happens. And after fibers have been recycled a number of times, they end up being too short to form into a sheet of paper or a sheet of board. And that's where you get things like egg boxes coming from, and other pulp products where the fibers are too short, and they get formed into a shape rather than rolled into a fiber product like paper or card.
Okay, great. And then this is something that we hear often out there, is that plastic can be recycled approximately 7 times. So is that true? Does it lose quality every time it's recycled? And then if that 7 number is true, what happens after the 7th time it's been recycled?
I don't know about the 7 times, and it depends on the process it's been through. It depends on how heavily it's contaminated, what sort of product it is. So it could be up to 7 times. It might be more. It might be less. But plastic, unlike aluminium and steel, is not a permanent material, and it has the same issue as with paper and cardboard recycling. So when you manufacture something out of plastic, there's an element of the polymer type, which might be high density polyethylene, which is what milk containers are made out of, like this. And when you recycle them, you also need to add in some plasticizers, which is another type of compound, and also potentially some fillers, which is quite often a chalky compound, to make that material suitable for being an engineered product, making it into a carton. You may also need to add some virgin polymer into the process as well, because recycled polymers don't have exactly the same characteristics as virgin polymers. And depending on the usage, it can be recycled a number of times, but it might not be. You also have the issue of whether there's ink or colouring in the product as well. And so this shampoo bottle has got much more print on it, and it's also a sort of mauve colour, whereas the milk carton's a clearer product. So it will depend on the use how it's recycled. And then after something can't be recycled anymore, at the moment, that item will go for incineration and it'll generate electricity. Because if you think about it, plastic comes from oil, and then if it's incinerated in a controlled environment to generate heat and power, it's in many ways the same as incinerating or burning oil to generate, or gas to generate heat and electricity for our homes. In the future, and this technology is very close, we are taking plastics like this, low-grade plastics, well, I say high-grade plastic, but low-grade plastic after this has been used, and particularly films that have got heavy food contamination, and they are being distilled down back into their component building blocks called naphthas, which then go back into the petrochemical industry as a plastics component for building up virgin polymers again, and that's called chemical recycling, and that is very close, probably only 18 months to 2 years away before that's a commercially viable solution, which is great because it's keeping the resources in the circular economy, because they get recycled in a chemical way rather than the mechanical way.
Right, okay. Should we be telling people, and you were saying it depends, like if there's a lot of printing on it and loads of different colors, so should we be telling, manufacturers and the big companies that produce, food packaging, or like you were showing the shampoo bottles, should we be saying, clear plastic or minimal writing, minimal stickers and all that? Should we be really advertising that?
Absolutely, and the manufacturers of products and the designers of products have got huge responsibility to make things more recyclable across all material streams. So having minimal amount of print directly onto the fibre or the polymer, having easily removable labels is really, really key to make the packaging more recyclable, and getting the public to remove labels where possible. And get the material down so it's much easier to recycle. There's a very famous case with Lucozade, who came out and said that they had this fantastic recyclable and contained recycled content Lucozade bottle. Then they put it in a complete plastic film wrap that was shrunk wrap and heat wrapped onto it, so it's totally possible to recycle at that point. So we're very as consumers led, marketing led at the moment. And we need to move to be environmentally led, and we can still have something very attractive and very pretty. And I'm sure this would have been bought, and we would have got the Peter Rabbit branding and messaging across with maybe 25% of the printing, so 75% less printing. I think that would be the case.
Yeah. Cool. Easy one. What happens to our glass when we pop it in our recycling bin at home?
Relatively easy one. So there's three colours of glass. Green glass, which we're very familiar with, wine bottle. Clear glass, you often get jam in it, or whiskey in it, vodka in it. And then brown glass, amber glass, which is sort of beer bottles, but it's used less frequently. With contemporary designs. Historically, we didn't have the technology to colour separate those types of glass. So you would go to the bottle bank and you'd put glass in different colour bottle banks. Now the technology is very advanced and very simple for optically sorting glass. So don't worry if all of your glass goes mixed together. What happens once it's collected as a mixed stream, it's broken down into 50 pence piece sizes of glass, and then it's sorted using very high-speed optical sorters, which look at each individual piece of glass, and because of the way the light refracts out of the different colours, the machine can tell if it's clear, amber or green glass, and it uses an air jet to separate it into a separate hopper, and then you end up with very clear, pure colored in each of the three colour streams, which then goes on to the recycling industry. And the recyclers are very adept at washing the glass, removing any paper labels, plastic labels, but again, the manufacturer have got a responsibility to make those water soluble so the label comes off. And also, really importantly, they're very good at removing the caps and lids of wine bottles. So always leave the lid on, the sleeve on, the cage, if you're celebrating drinking champagne. That can all go in a glass recycler, because the glass industry is very, very good at removing those metals, which are usually aluminium and highly recyclable, so they can get that metal out, so don't worry about putting that in there.
Okay, great, thank you. Is it worth having a food waste bin at home? What does the council actually do with it? Because we often hear people that are quite hesitant to have a food waste bin in their homes, and then other people that are, thrilled about it.
Yeah, so absolutely, really, really important to recycle food waste. It's really simple to do. If it's associated with something that you eat and you're not eating it, put it in the food waste bin. So most of us know what we can and can't eat. So we shouldn't really have some questions about whether it's food waste or not, and whether it's recyclable. Everybody has food waste, whether it's leftover food, peelings, prepared work, tea bags, all of that, coffee grounds can go into the food waste recycling bin. Check locally whether your councils provide a food waste recycling service, and there is some interruption at the moment in services, but that will come back to normal. It's really important to recycle food waste because it often is the main contamination that we see in recycling services. It's super easy to recycle. People get worried that they're going to have a smell, or they're going to attract fruit flies or vermin in the food waste recycling. You have this stuff anyway, it's just mixed in with your general waste, and actually having it separated and taken out more frequently stops your general waste bin smelling or attracting things anyway, which you might change that frequently. The food waste then goes on to generate electricity, and it goes into something called an anaerobic digester, which is like a massive industrial-sized metal stomach. And there's two types of bacteria in there. The first one takes the carbohydrates and breaks them down into sugars, and the second one consumes the sugar and produces methane, which is a gas which is highly flammable, and that gas is fed into the gas network and blended with natural gas. So when you switch on, if you've got a gas hob at home, if you switch on the gas hob to do some cooking, a percentage of that is from your food waste, which has been digested down by these completely natural, super efficient bacteria, which consume the food, generate methane, and then it comes into your household to generate a renewable source of energy. The leftovers from the bacteria's lunch is a super rich, high nutrient fertilizer, which gets spread on land, and it's very safe to grow farmers' crops. So it's a really nice little circular, closed loop way of generating electricity and having an organic fertilizer. So it's a really great recycle your food.
Great. Cool. Okay, so everyone look up if your council offers it, and if they do, do it. You mentioned that actually a few councils were operating, like a reduced service at the moment. Is it true that that some councils are having a hard time collecting recycling at the moment?
Yeah, it is, and I think some councils have got people who've either vulnerable, been operatives who are vulnerable and therefore staying at home, or they've got higher levels of sickness. So I think there is some interruption in certain areas, and also because people are working at home, there's a higher volume of material to recycle. And we have heard that councils are tending to focus on residual waste collection and clearing the waste. So they may either leave the recycling behind, or the recycling for a short period of time may be taken for incineration. So again, if you're worried about this, check with your local councils. But also, First Mile, if you're in London, we have top-up services as part of our at-home division. So if you go on shop.thefirstmile.co.uk, you can buy there a top-up cardboard collection, a top-up waste collection, a top-up recycling collection. Doesn't cost very much money, and you can rest assured that all that material goes for recycling. So different ways of solving that problem.
Great. A lot of brands at the moment are turning plastic into backpacks, t-shirts, a lot of sportswear. How does that work? Polyester fibers that you see in fleeces are made out of plastics, just a different type of polymer. Zips used to be a metal zip, and they're nearly often now plastic zips. There's lots of different plastic components and plastic fabrics, rucksacks, sort of ripstop fabrics. They're all made out of polymers, plastics, and how that happens is, instead of making a cotton thread or a piece of wool, a strand of wool, the polymers are woven and they're extruded a very thin extrusion of plastic, and that is spun on itself to produce effectively a plastic yarn. And then that is knitted into a fleece or into some sort of polymer cotton or wool polymer mix. The mixed fabrics are very difficult because you can't extract the polymers from the wools to recycle. Yeah. But because these materials are made out of plastics, there's a number of companies that are taking recycled plastic bottles, such as milk bottles, respinning that into plastic yarn. And also you see some people as well who are saying they're collecting ocean plastics from beaches and recycling that down and spinning it into yarn. And the main material, I've got one here, is PET, which if you look on the bottom, it's number 1. And PET, this polymer that makes a plastic bottle, a Coca-Cola bottle, is exactly the same polymer that makes a fleece jacket. So that can be turned into a fleece jacket within a few days if it's recycled. Okay, great. So would you say, for example, some of these organizations that, like you said, are, you know, collecting the plastic bottles and stuff that have been left on beaches, I don't know if there's a right or wrong, or yes or no answer for this one, but would you say, oh no, it's better to take all those bottles and to recycle them back into bottles or other plastic products? Or do you think it is a good idea to actually turn some of those into clothes, fleeces and stuff?
I think the issue really at the moment is with recycling that we need, I'll answer the question in general ways, that what we need for recycling to work, we need to have some demand side as well. So part of the reason that it's difficult to recycle at the moment is because manufacturers, consumers, designers aren't specifying recycled content enough in their products. And the default is go for virgin material because it's a consistent quality, it's usually cheaper to get hold of, and you get more options in terms of the technical specification and the colours. And it's quite lazy design just to go, we're going to make it look nice, we're going to buy virgin polymers. And I think what we need to do is really encourage the design community and consumers to say, actually, I don't mind if I only get 2 colour choices because I want it to be recycled. A classic example is, would it really matter? This is a shampoo bottle made out of virgin polymer, and it's sort of almost been made to look a bit grey. It's actually sort of a creamy colour. Would it matter if that was grey and made out of 100% recycled content? It's got a label on it anyway. I don't think it would really matter. And so I think if anybody is specifying recycling at the moment, and you could argue that some of it is corporate greenwashing and people sort of trying to get on the environmental bandwagon.
Yeah.
With that. I just think if anybody is doing anything to promote recycling, we did a project with Anya Hindmarsh, and she did a sort of a relaunch of her 2007 I'm not a plastic bag until I am a plastic bag, for her Bag for Life. I think any of that promotes design and incorporating recycled materials into design is really important, gets a big thumbs up from me, promoting what we need to do, get more recycled content into the supply chain.
Great, thank you for that. I've seen we've received a few questions from the audience. Keep them coming.
Excellent.
I noticed a funny looking one about ice creams from Blake. So Blake has said, seeing as it's summer, or that we're coming into summer, can I recycle lolly wrappers even if they have ice cream on them? Very specific.
Very specific. Ice cream wrappers normally, if I'm sort of thinking about the ice creams that people are probably consuming at home, an ice cream van, our local ice cream woman is called Tina, and she's great because there is no packaging. You get a cone with a scoop of ice cream in it. You eat the packaging in effect. The ice creams I'm thinking of at home tend to go in a cardboard box, which is this sort of cardboard like that. Definitely multi-pack, recycle the cardboard box, and then they tend to come in a plastic sleeve, and that thin plastic is very difficult to recycle at the moment because again it's highly printed, different polymers, quite often with food contamination on it, in this case recycling. So those plastics at the moment need to go in the residual waste bin because we're not advanced enough at recycling those plastics, and they tend to move around the recycling process and blow away, and you can't sort them with gravity. They don't float particularly well. They move around in the airstream, so they're very difficult to sort and recycle. So unfortunately, Blake, any ice cream wrappers need to go in the general waste bin.
Cool. What about like a Ben and Jerry's tub?
A tub. If it's a plastic tub, absolutely. Check the polymer type on the bottom. It's probably going to be polypropylene, HDPE or PET, and that can absolutely be recycled. Make sure you eat all the ice cream. If there's a little bit left in there, you don't need to wash it, but you can rinse it. And I always say to people, if you're rinsing, don't use new water, particularly hot water, because that's bad for the environment. To heat water to rinse out recycling, just use your old dishwasher water to recycle it, or just scrape it out. That's fine.
Great. And then we've got another one here for Marion. She's asking, what would you recommend for leather shoes that can no longer be worn? How can I recycle them?
You can send them to First Mile. If you check out our recycled box site, we have shoe recycling available there, which is recycledbox.co.uk, or get in touch with us. There's the obvious route, which is to donate them to a charity shop, but charities are quite specific about footwear, and I think quite a few of them now don't take footwear anyway. We're recycling shoes at the moment, and it's quite an early technology. If it's a trainer type shoe, we're harvesting it, recycling it, sort of harvesting it, mainly for the rubber sole, because we can extract the rubber sole, and then that goes into a surface for horse arenas and also for playgrounds. If you walk into a playground and the surface is quite bouncy, that's recycled Wellington boots and the sole off trainers. With shoes, if it's a leather upper, we can recycle the leather upper, or indeed a leather sole as well. We can recycle the leather, and that gets ground down and remanufactured into something called e-leather, and it's ground very, very fine into almost granules, particles of leather, and then it's sprayed onto a synthetic membrane to form a new synthetic type of leather. And it's quite good because it can be treated with many, many different colors, and it can be have fire retardants and things put in there. So for commercial uses for leather, the thing that we struggle with, and it's quite hard to know whether your shoes contain this, is we can't deal well with metal components in shoes. So stilettos, for example, and high heels, we can't manage those because they always have a metal structure in the heel. So depending on the leather shoe will depend if we can successfully recycle it or not. I hope that answers the question, but it's quite difficult to recycle footwear.
Yeah. We've got another, I guess, fashion-related question. So someone's asking, are the fleeces that, Bruce, you mentioned earlier, are they made from 100% plastic yarn, or are there other fibers present in them? And then can those fleeces in question, can they be recycled again when they can't be worn anymore?
Yeah, so there's, as with all these things, there's millions of different products. Yeah. And if you buy a bog standard fleece, it's probably almost certainly 100% plastic, the zip, the fasteners, the fleece itself, everything. Something that is a bit more design-led, might have other components in it as well. A really great site to check out is Patagonia. They're the people who pioneered making fleeces from recycled fiber. So the answer to the question is, depending on the fleece, it may or may not be made out of recycled fiber. The vast majority of fleeces are still made out of virgin fiber because they're just taking virgin PET, spinning it into yarn, making a fleece because it's a cheap way to make a high-tech product. Some companies like Patagonia are recycling plastic bottles to make the fleece. But yes, fleeces can be recycled back into yarn again and into other plastic products. Again, it's not that simple because of the associated products. So you have to get the zips off and you have to get any fasteners out of it, but it is possible to do that.
Great, cool, thank you. I think, yeah, that was our last question for today. So thank you for all your answers, and to everyone listening, thank you for joining. So we'll be back next Wednesday, same time, so Wednesday, 12 o'clock, for what will be our 6th edition of Can I Recycle That? Thanks, Bruce.
Jess, well chaired, you did really well.
You too.
Great. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks, bye. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.